Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review. I'm Lou Rosenfeld, and I'm delighted that today's guest, actually a veteran of this podcast because he's written 2 books for us before, and now a third one is on the horizon, one and only Chris Noessel. Hi, Chris. It's great to see you. It's great to have you join us, and I'm so excited about the new book. Maybe not as much as you. I mean, it's always a little different when you're the one who wrote the thing. But folks, in the next month or two, you're going to see an announcement from us for Chris's Designing Assistant Technology, AI, that makes us smarter. We're going to get into that in just a moment. You may know Chris from some of the other books that he's written. For us, he co-authored with Nathan Shedroff, Make It So, Interaction Design Lessons from Science Fiction. And Chris, that was out almost 14 years ago. So you can believe it.
I know.
And
So
a lot of that's probably already come true, but I always love that book because it really features the future of interaction design as predicted in sci-fi TV and film. I think you guys did a great job with it. And then your other book came out in 2017, that's Designing Agentive Technology, which I think is a kind of nice sibling to the new book. Am I right?
Oh, 100%. And in fact, I would say it is a direct follow-on to the Agentive book.
So we've got something agentive, and now we have something assistive. First of all, you're going to have those words always throw me. So you're going to have to differentiate them for a moment, and then we can dig into the new one.
Sure, happy to do so. And I have to be a bit pedantic about the wording because when I wrote the Agentive book and I had to coin some term for that new, looking back, it seems quaint, but that new technology of agents in 2017, I was thinking about, well, we granted agency to act on our behalf, therefore it's agent-based, and the suffix for adjectivizing something is IVE. Greek or Latin, I forget which one it is, but I made sure that they were parallel. And so the natural companion to agentive would be assistive, but assistive is actually a protected term legally.
Oh, dear.
Assistive means something that helps somebody who is physically challenged or disabled. And that is a hard-won legal definition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm unwilling to dilute that term, but one book is already published, so I just have to deal with them not being parallel. Agentive and assistant tech. And it's going to be hard for me to remember, but I'll try and repeat it correctly as often as I can.
Will I.
Okay.
So what is assistant technology? I mean, all right, we all know that's a kind of flavor of AI. And by the way, I'm really glad you're leaning into the terminology because I fully expect and kind of hope that we stop talking about AI as using that term. It's like, at some point, telephone was really exciting, I'm sure. And, we stopped talking about telephone and we got into all kinds of flavors of things related. I assume we're heading in that direction, and the nomenclature is going to be quite important.
And it's too monolithic, right? The spell check is a different beast than a large language model, is a different beast than an image creator. So to speak of it all under one umbrella, it's too big an umbrella to be useful nowadays. But the difference for me is, and there's probably a Wittgenstein's ladder that we have to go through.
Guy, he comes up on every podcast.
So much that we have to talk about the simple lie before we get to the detailed, nuanced truth. So for my money, the simple version of that answer is that an assistant helps a user do something. And in contrast, an agent does that thing for them. Now, when you say it like that, it seems such a tidy and clean break, and it's absolutely not. The sophomore issue is, of course, when we borrow those words from English, if I were an executive at some company and I had an assistant, that assistant almost certainly could do agentive tasks for me, right? Hey, I'm going to be in a meeting, or no, I'm going to be reading for a while. It's really important. Don't bother me unless my publisher calls. If Lou calls, then I want you to interrupt me. That is an
Exactly.
agentive set of instructions, even though their name is an assistant. And certainly, like when I talked to a travel agent, as if they still existed, if I were to speak to a travel agent, they're mostly doing assistant tasks for me because they're helping me as I'm like, hey, I don't know how to get the best fare for a flight to Tahiti or whatever. They are acting, in my definition, as an assistant. So the language is a little muddled,
Hmm.
but the sort of final rung in Wittgenstein's ladder here is that it doesn't even depend. Like, even if you just sort of excuse the English words and you just pay attention to my definition, it's still more complicated than that. When you think of something like text entry on a cell phone, it operates in several modes of interaction at once.
Hmm.
The predictive text is AI. And if your attention is on the suggestions as your thumbs are typing, it's an assistant.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've typed in Agent, and yes, agentive is the word, and thank you for saving me those 3 extra taps. But if I'm not paying attention to those predictive suggestions and I'm just typing away as fast as I can, and it auto corrects for me, then it's acting as an agent. So it has to do mostly with the user's, and here's another fancy term, locus of attention. Where are they paying attention to and what are they doing? And then how does the technology either work for them or help them?
That's a great explanation. Thank you for that.
Yep, yep.
Um, and I love that you came up with a very kind of familiar, in the weeds example with predictive text. We all experience it. Anyone with a phone. Um, but what about assistants that are a little more, I don't know, developed? The kinds of things that we're seeing scads of ridiculous investment going into right now. What are some of the ones that we may be using now that stand out a little bit more or are on the horizon, supposedly?
Well, certainly the advent of large language models at the end of 2019 have given us about what, 4.5 years to 5 years of experience with natural language assistants,
Hmm.
much more so than the sort of constructed conversational assistants we had prior to that. And of the over the last year and a half or so, that many of those services, like Claude, have begun to offer agents as part of the service that they're offering. And so, like, that's a pretty good example of an assistant that has had agent functionality incorporated into it. And yeah, I think that's people are going the opposite direction than the books I wrote.
Hmm.
But that's okay. That's okay. The agent was the new shiny thing, and assistants are coming after for completely different reasons. Then that's the order people would experience it in.
So, what are some of the projects that you imagine, like people listening to this podcast, may be working on that are very much in the vein of assistance?
There's so many, and I think currently in the near term, the majority of AI enabled or empowered products are going to be on the side of assistance, agentic hype notwithstanding.
Hmm.
Um, all of the sort of classic AI functions that we know of, clusterers, and I'm going to be throwing out some jargon terms, but clusters, classifiers, regression analysis are things that help users often in a decision-making mode. Oh, so when I was at IBM, back when they were invested in design, I
RIP.
worked on a couple of projects um, where we were doing things like inventory management. So a person at a large enterprise has to manage the inventory around a huge geography. And they have lots of goals, one of which is, hey, I want the products near where they're going to sell, at the time of sale so that we don't have to, so we minimize shipping costs and we don't miss out on sales because the product isn't there. It's a non-trivial challenge and there's an entire industry around it.
Hmm.
So that team utilized AI in order to make predictions about where demand was going to be and even to scenario-wise, a big janky word, for lack of a better one. Okay, where might you pull inventory to meet current needs in a way that is cost effective and matches predictions? That is an assistant through and through, right?
Hmm.
User has to make a decision. There is risk associated with the decision, and that can affect the bottom line. So that is an assistant that is right on the line and concrete. And I think a lot of things are like that. The example I use at the front of the book is wayfinding.
Hmm.
So Google Maps or Apple Maps. And there's lots of AI in that example, but one that I point out that a lot of people don't even think is AI is like the estimated time of arrival. Nobody has sat down with a pen and paper and worked out your particular route among the network of roads. It's a regression analysis, but that piece of information is really useful
Hmm.
to drivers as an assistant. Here's how I can mentally plan. Do I need to go faster? Do I need to break the speed limit or cheat the HOV lane, or can I chill out and ease out? So I think for the most part, most of what's going to be built in the near term is going to be assistance in that way, and then agents will be introduced after that. And kind of that's
That
what
makes
we just talked
sense.
about with Claude. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at this or thinking about it through the lens of being a publisher, and you're an author. So I guess, for your next book, I might tell you, Chris, you can use assistant AI to help you write your book. I'm not so sure about Agentive.
Oh, right. Yeah, totally.
Although maybe if to help you with your research, go, all right, Agentive tool, I'm going to bed tonight. When I wake up in the morning, look for, present me with this, blob of research to help me with my writing. That seems to make sense. But don't write it for me.
Don't write it for me. Yeah.
Right.
Two thoughts come to mind. The first is, have you heard about the Science Fiction Writers of America Guild sort of decision late last year?
No.
So they have been wrestling, and I feel I empathize. I've written some, I've published some short stories, some fiction, and so I've been through that, dealing with editors, and it's a hard process. But as of, I'd say, 2020, magazines that were soliciting stories from authors were absolutely flooded with a bunch of AI slop. And on the one hand, you're like, okay, yes, we're democratizing writing, but on the other hand, it's increased noise to signal ratios so far that the editors could no longer do their jobs. And the notion of hiring 5 to 10 extra editors just on that first pass to say, yeah, this looks like AI slop, we can't accept it, is a massive challenge to the industry. So what the Guild did, the SFWA, is after lots of hemming and hawing, and took a couple of years, they have finally, they also offer the Nebula Award, which is
Hmm.
sort of the most prestigious award for science fiction writing, that is out there in the Western world. And they made a decision that was formalized, I think, in November of last year, that said, A, if you used AI in any part of your writing, you cannot submit for the Nebula, or sorry, you cannot accept a Nebula nomination. And if somebody else nominates you, not knowing whether you used AI, you must share that you used AI in the writing of it and
Mm.
remove yourself from the nomination process. And it's full abolition. It's a little ham-handed because I'm pretty sure none of those editors or authors are turning off spell check or grammar check.
Hmm.
So, like that same AI
What is
monolith
AI at that
vocabulary
point?
problem, it's
Yeah.
all AI.
Yeah.
But they mean generative AI, and whatever, we have to deal with that language nuance. But they are chalk in the middle of it of like, well, how do we deal with AI in the context of writing? And their answer was, we're not. We're just
Yeah,
not.
and I can kind of see that with fiction. I feel it's a little different with nonfiction, which is, the stuff that we work with. Um, I want to turn us to another topic that's
Okay.
related, and it's stupidity. But we're going to do that after the break. So there's our little teaser. And everyone, we're going to be right back. We're talking, and we'll continue talking with Chris Noessel. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. Hey, it's Lou. We've got another conference coming up naturally. This one is the, I believe, 7th edition of Advancing Research. It's taking place virtually March 10th and 11th. As always, a great program. This one's a little different in that we think researchers really need to hear some wisdom from people who've been through things before and have a lot of experience because, man, these are tough times, and we could really use a pat on the back and some help from people who are wise. So we've got some really wise people on the program. You may have heard of some of them, folks like Steve Krug, Dana Chisnell, Sam Ladner, Jared Spool, Laura Klein, and many more. That's just a piece of the program. We've also got those meaty case studies that are the center of the program. It's all taking place virtually. And by the way, we've dropped our prices. I should mention that. But virtual, March 10th and 11th. I hope you'll be there. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. We're talking with Chris Noessel, whose book, Designing Assistant Technology, AI That Makes Us Smarter, is coming out very soon. I think it's going to be February or March. I should probably know this, but even in a little company like Rosenfeld Media, the guy at the top is often the human out of the loop, so to speak. So AI that makes us smarter. I think one of the reasons you selected that as a subtitle is the issue of stupidity. And our assistants intentionally or unintentionally making us stupid. Why don't we dig into that? Because stupidity is one of my favorite topics for some reason. I don't know, maybe it kind of hits close to home.
Yeah, it really does. And I want to be fair about our terms. Stupid is a pejorative, and I certainly don't want people to come away from the book misunderstanding my intention. Stupidity in this context is largely about over-reliance and a term that's becoming more and more popular, cognitive debt. And that means whenever you have an assistant that helps you do something, there runs a risk of dependence, right? Oh, you're helping me do a thing becomes I can't do a thing without that. And in some cases, that's okay, right? We have to make a call. Whether, like, I don't, the example I use at conferences is I had toast with my breakfast this morning and I have no idea how to plant, harvest, or mill wheat, right? I am dependent on that giant machine to fill my belly. And I think most people are okay with that trade-off, but we're not okay with it in a lot of contexts. And in the case of AI in particular, we're offloading cognitive tasks to it. So, I feel pretty confident in my ability that if I needed to, I could go plant wheat, I could go harvest, it would be hard work, but I could do it. But the loss, especially at scale of cognitive skills, is of great concern. So, like to society, as well as the individual, as well as organizations. So when we talk about stupidity, keep in mind that we're really talking about over-reliance and dependence, and even third vocabulary word, de-skilling, which touches on whether or not it's intentional. So, but to talk about some examples, I open the book with an example from my personal life, which is comparing how I learned to drive in Houston when I was a teenager, Texas, where I grew up, and moving to the San Francisco Bay Area for the first time. And in Houston, I felt like I had mastered a pretty complex road network in about 6 months. Like I couldn't get to any arbitrary address, but I could get to most every neighborhood that you could name in the city. And then when I got to the Bay Area, it was after like 2 years, I realized that I couldn't do the same thing. A friend invited me out to a barbecue in the Richmond, and I had no idea where that was at the time. And the difference, of course, was that by the time I had moved to the San Francisco Bay Area for the second time, the iPhone was in the world, and I had Maps and Google Maps
Hmm.
on that device, kind of doing that thinking for me. I didn't have the need to internalize it. So it certainly didn't make me stupider, except in the sense that I had not internalized the knowledge, the broad strokes of the road system here. Um, I certainly think stories are going around a lot right now about the first generation, first couple of cohorts who have gone through university with ChatGPT at their side and the negative effects of that. MIT did a really fascinating study on the phenomenon called Your Brain on ChatGPT, where they asked two groups of students to write an essay, one with an AI assistant, one without. And afterwards, they would ask the students questions about the essay that they had submitted. And as you can imagine, those who use ChatGPT never quite internalized the things that they had put down and submitted under their own name, partially because they hadn't done the heavy work to really think it through, come to the conclusion themselves, and then wrangle it into words, and then say, "Oh, yes, here is my thinking on that." So yes, I believe that dependence and over reliance is a major risk with any assistant, but AI makes it more significant and troubling. I'll follow that up just with a next thought that's not in the book, but that I've been thinking since we kind of wrapped editing of it is
Of
over
course.
reliance at scale.
Hmm.
Right? There's the over reliance and dependence of a person, which the book is largely concerned with, but there's also over reliance at the level of the organization. I'm not going to mention the organization to protect those involved, but I do know somebody at an organization who's a designer who has been working with a developer at that same organization who's like, I'm going to try and design this thing without designers. I'm just going to use an AI. And the irony is they had to bring the designer in to evaluate the output because the developer doesn't know enough about design to
Hmm.
say anything other than I like those colors. It looks nifty to me, right? And design is so much more complicated than just that. Fitness to task is not determined by how much you like the colors. So I think there's a second level there that needs to be worked out, but it is very much going to be a concern not just for the individual, but sort of at the big, large level. And the good news is, I do think, and I put it in the book, it's the whole point of the third section of the book, that I think designers have a uniquely leveraged position in order to combat that, to mitigate that potential over reliance.
Can you get into that a little bit? I mean, like, I'd love for you to give listeners a little taste of, in a really concrete way, if possible, like what they can be, how they can be positioning themselves. I mean, like, we're all sort of feeling under the gun, and we're all getting laid off sometimes because of AI, and it's just kind of stupid. It's going to, probably ricochet back in the other direction. And when that does, assuming it does, let's hope it does, what should we be ready to tell our the gods of industry that were laying us off a year earlier about how now that they've seen the problems that this technology has opened up, how we can be helpful?
It's going to be such a big problem.
Yeah.
Um, Back when I was with a small consultancy here in San Francisco, we used to joke with our clients that if you want us to design a thing, it's going to cost you X. But if you want to help, it's going to cost 2X. Um, partially because of all the learning that comes along with it. And in the case of, like, if I point back to IBM, my former employer, like getting rid of the vast bulk of their designers, if you think, oh, sure, the developers will just use an AI to do that design stuff, but they can't evaluate it, well, they're going to go through a cycle of, oh, I thought it was right, but now I've learned a little bit about, I don't know, order of operations from a human psychology standpoint. Okay, now I'm going to go back and reprompt it. Oh, and now I've learned something about locus of attention. Oh, now I'm going to go back and do that. Oh, now I've learned something about constraints in design and consistency. And like slowly, you're educating them to be a designer. But
Mm.
that's a very expensive way to go. And I would argue that you don't want those two advocates in the same body, an advocate for the system and an advocate for the user. They need to be separate. That's a very healthy tension to work within. But if you put it into one body, that body is going to err on one side or the other. I would never, yeah, I really hope that that is not the route, that like we're going to be like, oh, hey, developers, you're now going to become designers, even though you're ill fit for it. And when you have a conflict between those two things, we know which way you'll go. That spells some disaster for a lot of reasons. And I feel like I've lost the thread.
Well, I think there's just, there are, and the book has quite a lot of concrete help, as well as
Oh,
stories
yep, yep, yep.
and really philosophy. And it's almost too hard to boil it down. So I guess that's an argument, folks, for buying the book. It's going to be on pre-order shortly at 15% off till it comes out later in 2026. We're looking at February or March. But let's just talk about books on stuff like this for just a moment.
Sure.
Some might say it's a fool's errand to write or publish things on paper about things that change quickly, like AI. Is it a fool's errand?
I don't think so. Or wouldn't have written the book. I don't think you think so.
Well, I don't as well. But
Right? You wouldn't have
why are
accepted the
we?
book.
Why do we feel
But-
this way, Chris?
Right. No, it's a good question. I think one that any reader ought to ask themselves as they're evaluating or even considering buying a book. And to really give an answer, we have to talk for a second about the concept of pace layers,
My
which
favorite.
I know, I love pace layers. Like, it's such an insightful concept. And a pace layer says that and it's Stuart Brand and Russell, last name. You remember?
I thought it was a
I'm
Stuart
sorry,
Brand.
Russell, if you're listening. Yes, Oh, yes. Anyway, with the Long Now Foundation, formalized the concept of pace layers. And the idea is that in any complicated system, there is a layer that changes very, very rarely. And then there are layers on top of that that change more and more and more frequently. Their primary example was a house, right? The foundations of the house are often poured once, maybe corrected decades later if a crack forms or something goes wrong. But other than that, you don't really touch the foundation once it's poured. Then above that are sort of the beams and the walls. You touch that a little less or a little more frequently, especially if there's a problem that erupts or you want to make an addition to the house. And that keeps going all the way to like where the furniture is in the room. That's a very fast pace layer that can, and you should expect and you should account for that changing all the time. So when writing about something as swiftly moving as artificial intelligence, the challenge for the writer, and I would even suspect for the reader as well, is to identify, well, what of this is low in the pace layers and versus what of this is high, because AI is incredibly high in the pace layers. Like back when I was at IBM and running the Design for AI Guild for about 4 years, like we literally had a segment where every week we would talk about what has changed since the last time we met that is foundationally going to affect us. And it was a non-trivial part of our ongoing conversation, part of our community of practice. But especially when it comes to assistance, now we're talking about something that's very deep in a pace layer, right? We have assistance from the moment we're born. we call them parents, but they are an artificial intelligence in that they bring to bear, how do I feed you? How do I protect you? What skills are appropriate to teach you at this time? And what dangers do I simply need to protect you from because you're not ready for it? All that is intelligence that you don't have, but you depended on, right? And that is a kind of assistance. And that parent-child model is one that is sort of very informative. Take that up to like, you know, industry. We talked about, my eating toast this morning for breakfast, and all of sort of that assistance that I get. Um, it's a this is a the concept of assistance is, I think, pretty deep in the pace layer, and that's why in section 2 of the book I just talk about, well, here universally are the ways that assistants help users, and I go through lots of examples. I surprised myself with some of the examples that I found, but lots of examples that you can use either for inspiration or even as a checklist against your work. Hey, we're not doing a whole lot about helping them perceive here, so what could we do? How could we help them find the thing they need to find or perceive the thing they need to perceive? And then at the very highest level is the technology. No, not the highest level. So like second or third
There you
highest
go.
level
Yeah.
is the technology, right? Expect it to change, but certainly that middle layer of how do you help people is not going to change, right? You still want to assist people. It's part of our jobs as software designers, and part of our work as helping users do things in the world. We want to assist them. We want the software to assist them. And so that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. The things that you use to accomplish that goal will
Right.
change. And that's why I think me and Marta, my editor, wound up putting all that technology stuff in sidebars to kind of inform the reader. This may change, and that's okay, because you can put that sidebar down when something new comes up that helps you accomplish this goal.
Well,
Very deliberate.
that's great. Well, thank you. It's much. First of all, that was, I've been a fan of pace layers for probably 20 years. There's rarely a presentation that I've given in that time that didn't mention pace layers, and yet I think you just gave like the best explanation, the best metaphor, the whole building metaphor. I love it. I also want to just thank you for sticking up for books, because it's not just, we always describe it as a gift to the author in the sense of giving you and others time to sit back with support, to think things through deeply and create something that can anchor a body of thought against the shifting tides of what the hell is going on in this particular moment and the next moment and the next moment. But for you readers, it's a gift in a different way. Not only does it anchor your thinking, but a book is like something you can sit with. It's not connected to other content. It doesn't leak into other information systems and vice versa. It gives you a little bit of cognitive space to just sort of think. You hold it in your hands and it's quiet and you're focused in a way that you can't be if you're jumping around those outer layers of content. I always call it the slow food of content.
Yeah.
Chris, we got to wrap up, but before we do, in Rosenfeld review tradition, what'd you bring us? What's your gift?
Oh, my gift. This is a goofy one, but like you mentioned earlier, the Make It So book that I co-authored with Nathan Shedroff, which, looks at technology, speculative technology and science fiction, and evaluates it as if it were real world. And I have kept a blog since publishing that book. It's languishing of late. That's fine. But I still do turn to pop culture and run these thoughts through as I experience and watch movies and TV shows. And so the question has come up for me when I was writing the assistant book: what are some good models for assistance in science fiction, the body of work that at least I know about? And I think I've landed on one that's really telling, but also hopefully a little bit surprising. And that is the movie Doctor Strange from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And particularly in that movie, a series of movies, because there's a couple now, he has something called the Cloak of Levitation. It gets in the first movie. But it is semi-sentient. It can't speak, but it certainly helps him in some fundamental ways. And it's a great model because one of the questions that we're faced with as designers with AI in the world, how do we keep our users being the hero when they have something as powerful and as informed as AI is? And in the same way, writers of science fiction have to ask, well, how can we keep our heroes the heroes when they're like, you know, earth-shattering magics in the world or hammers? And I think Doctor Strange and his relationship to his cloak of levitation nails it really well. The cloak knows when to assist, how to assist, even though it doesn't have language, it has gestures. And it even knows, and I think there's one particular scene where it realizes that it can no longer act as an assistant because Doctor Strange is knocked out and it becomes an agent for him for a short
Ah,
while. So it even tells that sort of long story of modes of interaction and moving through those modes of interaction. My gift is to watch that movie with these ideas in mind, and I think you will find it enlightening.
I love it. I can't think of a more clever cloak.
Me either.
Well, Chris, thanks so much. Speaking of clever, it's so much fun to talk with you and to learn about the book and learn about assistance. And by the way, I just learned, speaking of learning things, that your book is due out on March 17th.
17th. Thank you.
So there we go. This just came in across the desk at Rosenfeld headquarters. Chris,
I wish you had a paper to rustle.
I know.
Look at it come across that way. Oh, hang on.
Designing Assistant Technology, AI That Makes Us Smarter by Chris Noessel. There, I gotta make sure I pronounce it right. It always trips me up, but the book is coming out March 17th. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and have you once again as a guest on the Rosenfeld Review. Thanks again. Great to talk.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, listeners.
Hey, it's Lou. Thank you for listening to the latest Rosenfeld Review podcast. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to pop me an email, lou@rosenfeldmedia.com, tell me what you thought. Better yet, leave me the hell alone and post a review on your favorite podcast platform. Please feed the algorithm. It really does make a difference. We want to get the word out. If you like the word, give us a hand. And while I'm asking you for favors, don't forget, buy books. Support your favorite local independent publisher. We happen to be one, rosenfeldmedia.com. All those great UX books are there. So, thanks again.